Hi and welcome to BeatleDave's Beatles channel. Today's video, I'm on the road and headed to a town where the Beatles played more shows than any other place in the UK, excluding London and Liverpool. So come and join me. So hello and a very warm welcome again to BeatleDave's Beatles channel. Hope I find all you fantastic Beatles people doing really well out there, and thank you so much for joining me again today on this very special video. So today I'm headed to the town of Bournemouth, where in just over 14 months the Beatles played 18 performances in 2 separate venues, putting Bournemouth in 3rd place of where the Beatles played most in the UK. So I'm in Westover Road in Bournemouth town centre, where 60 years ago the Beatles played a residency at the Gaumont Theatre. Designed by William Edward Trent, the Regent Cinema and Theatre, as it was first known, was first constructed in 1927, with the opening on the 13th of May 1929, and was the largest venue in town with 2,300 seats, with stalls and a large balcony. During the war years, the cinema presented late-night screenings for the troops stationed in the town, and the military commandeered the cinema to show instructional films in the build-up to D-Day. Renamed the Gaumont on the 22nd of August 1949, the theatre staged numerous plays produced by its own theatre group and presented a series of jazz concerts starring the top jazz musicians in the country. Hosting international stars and variety shows with the likes of Frankie Vaughan, Shirley Bassey and Norman Wisdom in the 1950s, the BBC would also broadcast regular theatre on Thursday nights. In the glory days of the 1960s, the Gaumont became a regular stop-off on the pop package tour circuit, with Cliff Richard and the likes of Billy Fury before the Beatles and the 60s beat groups took over. The theatre brought the curtain down for the final time on the 16th of November 1968, as it was closed for complete modernisation, but was soon reopened on the 15th of July the following year as a twin-screen cinema. The Gaumont was renamed the Odeon by the Rank organisation on the 30th of October 1986, and Screen 2 was then subdivided into 4 screens by June 1989, with the terrace bar being converted to a 140-seater Screen 6. The Odeon finally closed its doors for good on Thursday the 9th of February 2017 with a screening of La La Land, and after 88 years of entertainment, the Gaumont was superseded by a 10-screen multiplex in Exeter Road. Over 6 days from Monday, August the 19th to Saturday the 24th, 1963, the Beatles played 2 shows per night to a reasonably well-behaved audience, and it was during these shows that venue technician Tom Mellor made a 25-minute reel-to-reel recording on the 21st of August of the complete show, along with a debut stage performance of She Loves You, which would be released 2 days later. The tape itself was sold at auction on the 10th of December 1998 by Christie's for the sum of £25,300. It was actually sold to an unknown bidder, which actually turned out to be an Apple representative. Subsequently, though, the tape was placed in a safe. So the general set list at the Gaumont Theatre was as follows: Roll Over Beethoven, Thank You Girl, Chains, From Me to You, A Taste of Honey, I Saw Her Standing There, Baby It's You, Boys, She Loves You, and Twist and Shout. So during the Beatles' stay while they were playing at the Gaumont, the Beatles actually stayed at the Palace Court Hotel, which is behind me, and is currently now a Premier Inn. That's the Palace Court Hotel's restaurant level, and there's actually some great photos of the Beatles just sat actually on that particular veranda. Obviously now it's covered in, whereas back then there was no cover. Some other facts about their stay included George Harrison writing his composition of Don't Bother Me while he wasn't feeling too well in his hotel room, and also the cover shot of the album with the Beatles on the 21st of August, which was photographed by Robert Freeman for a flat fee of £75. So the Beatles in their polar neck sweaters were photographed in the hotel corridor with the velvet drapes just letting in the right amount of light which was required for the desired effect, creating an iconic, much imitated album cover. So after a very successful 6-day stint at the Gaumont, the Beatles returned to Bournemouth in November. The Winter Gardens is the history of two buildings on the same site, with the original 1875 ornate glass structure known as the Crystal Palace of the Summer and Winter Gardens, which had a capacity of 4,000. Built on Cranbourne Gardens, a favourite spot of the town's founder Lewis Tregonwell, the building lasted 42 years as a performance venue for the likes of Dan Godfrey's new Bournemouth band, until the building was demolished in 1935. In 1938, the new Winter Gardens was specifically built for the Bournemouth Indoor Bowling Club. However, because of the good acoustics, it was agreed that the bowling green would be converted into a concert hall, much to the irritation of the bowling club members. Around 1947, construction workers began to lay the brick foundations for the new stage, and a new generation of promoted shows, including international stars such as Bob Hope, Ella Fitzgerald, Perry Como and Brenda Lee, who appeared at the venue, with variety and summer shows also taking place. By the late 50s, the Winter Gardens became a regular stop-off on the package tour merry-go-round for stars of the short-lived skiffle craze. British rock and roll singers and the occasional American big name would also pass through its doors. With the arrival of the beat boom in the 1960s and over a 3-year period, virtually every group worth its salt came to the Winter Gardens, with the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Dave Clark Five, the Hollies, the Troggs, Herman Hermits, the Kinks, the Yardbirds, and also in 1965, the Tamla Motown Revue. In January 1967, the Gardens had a revamp along with the age of multi-group packages, starring the Jimi Hendrix Experience, The Move, The Nice, Amen Corner and the Pink Floyd, with this package proving to be one of the most memorable. In January 1972, Pink Floyd returned to perform The Dark Side of the Moon in its entirety, for only the second time, while in 1973 David Bowie brought his Spiders from Mars with the BBC filming him backstage, and Rollermania in November 1974, which was reminiscent of the Beatles 11 years earlier. The first death knell sounded for the Winter Gardens when in 1978 the new Poole Arts Centre was built, with an even bigger blow with the opening of the brand new Bournemouth International Centre in September 1984. The venue became a ghostly shell of its former self, as concerts were now relocated to the 4,000 capacity BIC, and for the next 20 years the venue gradually fell into decline and disrepair and was only utilised sporadically for the odd concert. In 2001, in excess of 25,000 people signed a petition to save the hall. However, after much wrangling between the council and pressure groups who tried to save it, the Winter Gardens and all its wonderful memories were bulldozed into the ground in May 2006, only to make way for a car park. So it was here at the original site of the Bournemouth Winter Gardens, which is now a car park, that the Beatles returned to play the two shows on Saturday the 16th of November 1963. They played at 6 p.m. and 8:30 p.m, and a slightly different setlist for that night was I Saw Her Standing There, From Me to You, All My Loving, You've Really Got a Hold on Me, Roll Over Beethoven, Boys, Till There Was You, She Loves You, Money, and Twist and Shout. As Beatlemania gripped the UK, the significance of these shows was immense, with the American film crews in attendance who had been given permission from Brian Epstein to film some of the performances. News was already beginning to hit USA shores of the phenomenon across the pond, and armed with film footage of the Beatles at the Winter Gardens as proof, well, it was only just a question of time. Paul McCartney and Wings actually also played at the Bournemouth Winter Gardens on the 15th of May 1973, where Paul would have been promoting his album Red Rose Speedway. So as of 2023, new plans have been submitted to build 352 apartments, a multi-storey car park, leisure facilities, restaurants and retail space on the Winter Gardens plot. And I really can't help thinking, though, that they've lost an incredible amount of music history here. And of course, it's another Beatles-related landmark which is gone forever. So 9 months after the Winter Garden concerts, the Beatles returned to the Gaumont on Sunday the 2nd of August 1964 for 2 shows in the same night. It was also 3 weeks after the release of their soundtrack album, A Hard Day's Night. So this time the crowds were much more hysterical than the previous year, and this date was actually part of a short 7-day UK tour after appearing in New Zealand, Australia and Hong Kong. And the set lists for these 2 shows were Twist and Shout, I Want to Hold Your Hand, I Saw Her Standing There, You Can't Do That, All My Loving, I Want to Be Your Man, She Loves You, Till There Was You, Roll Over Beethoven, Can't Buy Me Love, This Boy and Long Tall Sally. So the final time the Beatles appeared in Bournemouth was on Friday the 30th of October 1964, with 2 more shows in the same night, and a very Hard Day's Night set list it was, with Twist and Shout, Money, Can't Buy Me Love, Things We Said Today, I'm Happy Just to Dance With You, I Should Have Known Better, If I Fell, I Want to Be Your Man, A Hard Day's Night, and finishing with Long Tall Sally. So I'm now actually in Hinton Road, which runs parallel with Westover Road, and it's around the back of the Gaumont Theatre. I mean, to think that this amazing and historical building has been stood here for 94 years, and just how many fantastic people have performed here too with the Beatles. You know, like the Stones, the Byrds, the Kinks, Little Richard, Billy Fury, Cliff Richard, and just so many more appeared in what was a very big and important part of Bournemouth and its history. So 60 years has passed now after the Beatles' first residency in Bournemouth, and the Gaumont is looking extremely tired and dilapidated. It's currently up for sale, and hopefully maybe it'll be turned back into a music venue or even a cinema as it was previously. So a stone's throw from the Gaumont Theatre then is the Bournemouth International Centre, or the BIC as it's known in short. So the final Beatle to play in Bournemouth then was Ringo Starr on the 24th of June 2011, which was the last night of a 6-day UK tour. Now I was actually at this particular show, and I had a fantastic seat right at the front, just in front of Ringo. And an interesting note is that some 7 years before, previously on the 23rd of June 2004, Zach Starkey was making his drum debut with Oasis at Poole Lighthouse, with Ringo in attendance. So I'm on my way now to another location. This time it's actually Bournemouth's neighbouring town of Poole, which is just a few miles down the coast. So I've arrived at Sandbanks, where John persuaded his Aunt Mimi to move to 126 Panorama Road in October 1965, where John paid £25,000 for the original bungalow. Mimi had often mentioned Bournemouth and living by the sea to John, and it was while looking at the property in this particular area that this bungalow was found. Interestingly though, John had said to Mimi that if she didn't want the bungalow, he was going to move in. John was photographed many times in Sandbanks and was a frequent visitor with Cynthia and Julian, and later on with Yoko. John would often keep in phone contact with Mimi, and his final call to her Sandbanks bungalow was on the 5th of December 1980 with the news that he was homesick and was planning a trip back to the UK. After John's murder, the house ownership automatically went back to Yoko Ono, and this seemed to infuriate Mimi as she felt that she could be thrown out at any time. Mimi lived her final days at the bungalow being cared for until she died there on the 6th of December 1991, aged 85. It was the carer that was looking after her that later on stated that her final words were, "Hello, John." So my final location today then brings me to Poole Crematorium, where on the 12th of December 1991, John's Aunt Mimi was cremated here. The service was attended by John's first wife Cynthia, Yoko Ono and Sean, with floral arrangements being sent separately by Paul, George and Ringo, with their individual messages of condolence. The wake was held at the Harbour Heights Hotel Sandbanks, with Yoko Ono putting 126 Panorama Road up for sale on the same day as the cremation, with the bungalow being sold and finally being demolished in 1994. So I really hope you've enjoyed my Beatles in Bournemouth on the road video today, guys. And don't forget, as always, any comments or communication I get from any of you Beatles people, and I'll always come back to you just as soon as I can. So finally, if you enjoy what I'm doing, why not give us a like, subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future videos. This is BeatleDave signing off. BeatleDave.